Hey, my name's Jake Benfield. Today I'm going to talk about travel baseball and all that's kind of associated with it for the most part. Millions of kids today play travel baseball. It's actually one of the fastest growing sports in the U.S. today. It's played all throughout the U.S. and even other countries are getting into travel baseball also. I was one myself as I was on the kind of the forefront of travel baseball. I played as a young kid growing up, and travel baseball was just introduced when I was around 10 years old. So I played for a number of years, 4 or 5 years, travel baseball. So I kind of got to experience myself. Today I'm going to touch on just kind of the basics of travel baseball to help explain to you, everything that goes into it. I'm going to talk about the cost that's associated with travel baseball, what kind of scheduling you can expect with travel baseball, and also the age groups that travel baseball is generally played with. Hopefully, by the end of this little short speech, you'll be able to leave here knowing pretty much the basics and understand what travel baseball is, what it's all about. First, I want to talk about the cost that's associated with travel baseball. This can kind of be a little bit more broad than what I'd like it. If I was explaining about one location, it'd be a little bit easier to narrow it down. Um, but travel baseball, the cost that's associated with it is pretty much depending on where you live. If you're from a small town like myself, which is on the outskirts of any big cities or anything, cost is going to be a little bit lower. It's not as expensive. Whether if you're from a city like Miami, Florida, or Charlotte, North Carolina, the cost is going to be a little bit more up there because they usually play in more tournaments or whatnot, and the surrounding tournaments that they play on are generally a little bit more expensive. So on the low end, you're probably planning on paying around $1,200 a year for your kid to play travel baseball, and it can get all the way up to around $5,000 a year for the more expensive leagues. Um, the pricing usually covers all the tournament entry fees that your kid's going to play in throughout that year. It'll include uniforms that your kid's going to be wearing, and it'll also include the outerwear. So you'll have your kid will receive anywhere from 3 to 5 T-shirts, some sweatpants with team logos on it or whatnot to wear to practices or just to wear around, just to show off what team they play for. Um, some associated costs that's not included in that will be parents will have to cover any obviously the food on at tournaments for themselves and their kids, and hotel accommodations for out of town tournaments. Speaking about out of town tournaments, that'll work me into my next point here, which is the scheduling of travel baseball. Again, as I said earlier, it can be very different depending on where you live. If you're in a big city, chances are you're going to have a lot of tournaments inside that city, so you won't have to travel too far on the weekends to play travel baseball tournaments. And if you're like myself, you're in a small town, they might be only 3 or 4 teams around you. So instead of having a tournament where you're playing the three or four teams every single weekend, usually you're going to travel out, to anywhere from about 2 hours to even 8 hours to go to these weekend tournaments or whatnot. That way, you have the opportunity to play a much larger group of kids. Um, as far as like the tournaments go, usually the schedules of them are Saturday and Sunday for the most part. Every once in a while, they'll have the bigger tournaments where you play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then also you're going to have your major tournaments, which might be in the playoffs, like regionals or something on farther down the line, which will be even weeks long, a week long. So Monday through Saturday or Wednesday through Saturday, depending on if you win or whatnot. That kind of depends on how far you move on. And these tournaments can be, far out of town. So I'm from North Carolina, so if we was to advance to the bigger tournaments, I could have to, drive all the way down and play in, Florida somewhere. Um, so it just depends on the age bracket also, which will lead me into my next point here. The age groups that's associated with travel baseball. Again, kind of a broad range here depending on where you live. From my hometown, we usually have a travel baseball team that's 9 to 12 years old. So you don't have as many kids to pick from, but if you combine them all, you can create a couple teams or whatnot. When you're in places like Charlotte or Charleston, South Carolina, Miami, Florida, bigger cities, you can break that age limit down a little bit more particular. So you'll have a 9 to 10 group age, and then an 11 to a 12, and then 13 to 14. And usually travel baseballs will start around 8 years old, and then you usually top out of travel baseball, and it's kind of all over with by the time you're 16. Maybe in some places by the time you're 18, because by then you're done with high school ball, or you're getting done with high school ball and leading into college. So that being said, travel baseball is a really big thing throughout the U.S., and it's only getting bigger. It's like I said before, it's one of the fastest growing sports, and you won't have a total understanding after what I taught you today, but for the most part, you'll have the basics, and the basics really are just the costs associated with it, the scheduling that you can expect with travel baseball, and the age groups that differ between what kind of travel baseball league you're in. So once you get all those basics, those three things are kind of your basics, and then you'll learn more about it. If you have a kid that plays travel baseball, you'll definitely get in that experience and learn a lot more about travel baseball. But just to kind of touch on everything, that's your three main keys, and hopefully that gives you a better understanding about what travel baseball is all about. Thank you.